Hello and welcome to the Takeaway with Chicago Town, our live show here on Ballsdotie, where we'll be giving you immediate reaction after every Ireland game in the Six Nations. Now, another defeat for Ireland today, unfortunately, 13-15 at home to France. We're going to talk about all of that now. I'm delighted to say we're joined once again this week by the voice of the Takeaway with Chicago Town on Balls.ie, Mr. Darren Cave. Darren, what are we going to do here?
Don't know.
This is no crack.
Listen, we've been talking about this for months now, and I know people are logging on here for a bit of analysis, but I'm just not quite sure Ireland are as good at the minute as people think they are. I know people want to scapegoat or to fire a coach, but I thought Ireland played quite well. I think France are very good.
Okay, yeah, well, fair enough. We'll get into it all anyway, analysis or not. But our second guest today, a Leinster and Ireland legend, a man who was on the winning team for Ireland against France on 3 separate occasions, Malcolm O'Kelly. Mal, it's great to have you on. How are you? Look, plenty of other occasions in your career outside of those 3 wins where France were just too good for us. Do you think today was one of those days?
Yeah, I definitely think the quality of that French side is, far superior to ourselves. I thought we really made a good fist of it. To limit them to 1 score in the first half, which was completely against the run of play, was pretty good. And I think that effort showed in the first 10 minutes of the second half. But Ireland rallied really well. So. Sure. That French side are a side that are, your top 3 in the world, and at the moment we're a tier down. But we put ourselves in a position where give ourselves an opportunity to win that match.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into it all now in just a second. Of course, it wouldn't be the Takeaway with Chicago Town without some Chicago Town pizza, the perfect addition to any Six Nations game. Darren, I went for the classic for today's game, the tomato stuffed crust, loaded cheese. I believe you went for the cheese stuffed crust?
Yes, cheese stuffed crust, loaded cheese, Mick, and I did not even touch the sides on the way down, so delicious stuff. Better than the rugby result anyway.
I know, and you sent it up, we put it out on Instagram before the game with your prediction. And look, you went for a France win again. You went for I think by 10 points, and they won by 2 in the end. So I suppose Ireland actually outperforming by your prediction. But look, we do want you to be part of the show. Get your comments and your questions in for the lads. If you do leave a comment, you'll go into the draw for an Ireland jersey and some Chicago Town pizza vouchers. So do get involved. We actually have a couple flying in already. First one up here, lads. I think we have one. Shane, yeah. Here we go. Right, okay. Lads, kicking for touch. Farrell is playing rugby from 20 years ago. We did kick for touch a lot, actually. It was almost unusual. France were trying to keep the ball in the first half, and they were putting us under pressure, and we were just we were kicking it out. But I suppose we did have, Darren, we did have an advantage in the line out early on, at least.
We did kick. I was on commentary yesterday for Scotland-Wales, and there's a couple of times early in the game, Wales kicked like an old-fashioned Gary Owen, 40 metres away from the Scotland line. I did think, what a lack of ambition. And then the first 3 times in the game today, our first 2 times, we put the bomb up. So I think we did kick a lot. And listen, that was obviously the tactic going the game. I think without sort of banging the drum, I think France are better than Ireland at the minute. So the game plan was probably not bad. Ireland did enough to win that game. I thought Bryce Dulin kicked, I think he was man of the match in the end, maybe actually. He took a couple of great high balls. And I did think we kicked the ball a lot, but kicking's a big part of international rugby, especially when you do it well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I wonder, though, if we did kick the ball, Mal, a lot. And to be honest, it wasn't like, it did look like it was a tactic that they were going out with. And I thought Ireland were kicking it very well in the first 20 minutes when we were dominating the game, I suppose. But very early on, you realise Dulin's is fine here. He's not going to be a weakness for them. He ended up having a brilliant game. I think he was man of the match. Did we show enough variation then once that came along? And I suppose it leads into the question then, if that's not working for Ireland, what is? I personally think that we've become very easy to defend against.
I think it's very difficult to attack in international rugby. There's no soft shoulders. Ireland got very little return from anything that they did. I think their kicking was probably the best facet of the game. They really did quite well and got some good return. as Darren alluded to, like that is part of the of what is Six Nations rugby. You know, you've got very wet conditions. You've got guys that can challenge in the air, and you know, even by us kicking the ball out, we actually got some great return. Like France struggled to win the first 4 lineouts, and it really allowed us to pile on pressure in the first 10-15 minutes, and we were pretty unfortunate not to be further ahead in that period, and that was probably telling, the fact that we didn't score. And you know, it would be great to have probably players of absolute top quality that could maybe find a gap, or like, you know, like I wouldn't. Like Dupont was good, but he was actually quite quiet comparatively. Like James and Gibson Park probably played as well as Dupont did. But France, you know, just were able to take that opportunity, and that was the difference. I definitely wouldn't blame our kicking strategy. I thought maybe at the end, you could probably suggest, well, why were we kicking the ball away with 5 minutes to go? I was going like, we really do have to run it at this stage. So maybe you could argue that one. But throughout the game, I think they were pretty spot on. You know, so yeah.
I suppose, Darren, though, if we got the kicking, definitely it did work at times, and it caused danger, even though, and it did make you know, the French fullback have a very good game. So that's what you want. But after that, I suppose, if you look at what Ireland did, maybe we were unlucky, Mal, to not be ahead by more. But at the same time, other than James Lowe being very, very unlucky against 14 men not to score, we didn't really create any try-scoring chances over the whole 80 minutes, except for a freak from a line out with Kelleher. So it's like we're playing against 14 men in the first half for 10 minutes. We've got a 6-3 penalty count at halftime. We're dominating the line out in the scrum. We've got all the territory in possession. But Darren, we're not creating any chances. And it's like, you know, I understand what we're saying. Maybe Ireland aren't as good as France, but at some stage you have to take all of those factors and say there's something wrong that you're not making any kind of penetration at all and getting on the scoreboard.
And there's probably, I don't know, we've probably done like between 5 and 10 of these shows, and every time we've come on and said, I just think the jury's out a wee bit on Ireland, and I don't know how many times we can keep having that same conversation. Last week, Ireland had the ball. I don't know what the possessions and territory stats were, but for large parts of the game, they really didn't, actually for the whole game, they didn't cause Wales any problems other than a lovely break from Robbie Henshaw. And we sort of said, look, the 14 men, it's impossible, 14 men, let's see what happens this week. And again, I just feel like another game's gone by, and I'm watching these games and I'm not really learning anything. I'm not sure. I think it's quite hard to put your finger on what it is. I actually thought for the first sort of half an hour, there was quite a lot of flow to Ireland's play. There was the forward sort of passing the ball out the back and getting to the edge, really nice sort of deception, and kind of the messages that the team keeps speaking about. I know, Mick, we've spoken about this before. Sometimes I think that Andy Farrell and the team spend more time talking about the changes since Joe Schmidt, other than actually us seeing improvements as fans and people watching the game. So I thought some of our attack was really nice in that first half. The build up to the James Lowe was quite unfortunate with that try.
It was.
And I thought that was really nice interplay. And some of that I thought was really nice. I think ultimately just the French were a tiny bit too good for us. I think we played quite well.
Yeah, there's a load of comments coming in. You know, I think people obviously are kind of upset. Our Six Nations basically over after 2 games. You know, Alan Subs here asking, Lowe found out again defensively, thoughts. Is that fair? I think he was probably at fault for the try, but James Lowe in general, Mal, I think is worth discussing, because he was everywhere for good and bad today. I don't think I've ever seen a winger be on the ball so often and so regularly all the way through the game. But I mean, he did good and bad, really. I don't think you could be kind of you could be saying that it's at James Lowe's feet.
Yeah, well, I think James Lowe's a phenomenal player. I think he gives everything he's got. I thought he did incredibly well for his try opportunity. given a tiny bit of space and really worked hard for it. And generally, he was super strong in high ball. His kicking was pretty good. One or two not great, but generally pretty good. And I think he's really, taken, like, he's only had 2 or 3 caps. Let's not forget. So it's a big step up for him as well. And I think he's finding his feet really well. Like, he doesn't have out and out pace. So like when you compare him to likes of Reece Zammit, you saw him take his opportunity. He's not going to do that, but in essence, in the way Ireland are playing, he's probably more valuable to them than a Reece Zammit, because he can bowl over someone. It's pretty hard in Six Nations rugby, but half a gap is all he really needs. And I thought he was pretty good. I thought it's our defensive strategy is to come up. And I know back in my day, if you were on the wing and you didn't come up, and you gave a guy a chance to run at you, invariably they would score a try. So James Lowe takes his chances, and it's an all or nothing one against Bryce Doolan, and Bryce Doolan's so good on his feet, and James Lowe is a half a second late, and it's enough for James Lowe not be able to get a hit on him. Had he made a decision maybe not to come up as hard, well, then Bryce Doolan gets a one-on-one with him, and it's an offload and a try. So I think when you put your winger in that position, like if you reverse that and had James Lowe running at Bryce Doolan, I'm pretty sure that James Lowe would do just as good a job as Bryce Doolan, and Bryce Doolan would just do as bad a job as James Lowe. The French had better opportunities to score tries than the Irish did. Irish had very little opportunity, by their own creation, of course, by their inability to find a soft shoulder, their inability to offload and the tackle, which I think is the big difference between the two teams. Is that Ireland's and it's a mentality, it's a cultural thing. Ireland do not want to offload. They want to hit rooks. They want to rook, and that's Irish rugby is rooking rugby. French rugby is offloading. I can remember playing Toulouse back in the 90s, and even at that stage, Toulouse did not want to rook. All they want to do is offload. They would do these mini mauls, and they would maul you in the middle of the park to offload. And it's the same thing now. Their whole culture is built around offloading, and top 14 is all about offloading. That's where their great tries come from. Irish rugby is not like that. And if for Ireland to improve as an international side, they have to look at how they can train their top elite players to change how they attack the line to look for an offload. Because there is a skill to it. It's not something you can just change to. Also, guys, their support lines need to change to take and support for offloads. So that's where Ireland need to go if they want to be at the top table.
Yeah, it's a huge point. I think Ron Nagar made something similar at halftime. I heard you mention it before we started, and here as well. John Daly has a very similar comment here, saying when a team shuts down our strengths, we have a real lack of creativity. The best team ever is New Zealand, and they run hard lines and offload to support runners to keep gaining yards. Ireland, the refusal to play offload rugby. France showed the benefit today. Exactly what you're saying there, Matt. And it's like, Darren, this is a huge issue that's been going back how many years? And we've talked about it in some of the over the top criticism of Joe Schmidt that's come with a little bit of revisionist history. But at the same time, it's like it's a culture thing in the game, and it's like it really got us so far, but the game moves on, and it will reward people who take those chances and want to play a little bit more of the cup, so that France can go down once in the first half, all the way down to our end, and score a try immediately after us banging up against them for 30 minutes.
Well, with regard to the sort of style of play and the offload thing, I agree with Mal. I think it's a cultural thing. I mean, for me in my sort of era, I grew up watching David Humphreys at Ulster and Ronan O'Gara at Ireland hitting those spirals into the corner. I mean, the high ball is named after a club in Limerick. We are known Like, we're not known, and like Mal talks about French rugby. Mal's offload, but like in Ireland, like we're not known for that.
Can we not evolve? Can we not change what we're known for, though? I mean, if the game is moving on, we're an international. There's only like 9 top-class international teams in the world. Whatever about the schools rugby coming up and stuff, can we not, like, as a professional team, say this is where the game is at the moment? If it was moving to a more kicking game, we'd certainly go to that, or whatever it is. We'll evolve our defensive style, we'll evolve everything, but we don't seem to ever move with the times when it comes to attacking.
Yeah, and listen, I have repeatedly said on many media outlets, I think the criticism that came in for Joe Schmidt era at the end, because how it ended, was really, really unfair. The game's not about kicking or passing, or mauling or offloading. The game is completely about momentum and playing space. And that's one thing that I think that Ireland did for the past sort of 5 or 10 years better than up there with the All Blacks. They played space really well. People talk about England at the minute are a kick first team, and that's why they're missing opportunities for 5v3 and 7v5 on the edge, because when they have those opportunities, they're not recognizing, they're kicking the ball. And one thing I think Ireland have been very, very good at is playing space. That's what rugby we saw at Scotland yesterday. Scotland short kicking game. Scotland got, you look at the Darcy Graham guy, the Darcy Graham try. There's a couple of tries from short kicks as well. Like short kicking, it's about space. If the backfield are deep, play that space in the middle. If they're up, like the game's about space. If the space is on the edge, move it there. If the space is near the ruck, we saw Stuart Hogg yesterday go through the middle. And that's the one thing. I'm not obsessed with this like offload kind of idea. Yeah. I just want to see Ireland playing space. And I suppose I've made this point before. I've heard them talking about this new ethos of how they're going to attack every week. Keith Earls was talking about it in the press conference on Friday. And, I'm beginning to question my sanity, because I'm just not seeing this Ireland team attacking like as if it's a revelation of Irish rugby, and it's all new, and the players have. I feel stupid saying this. Is the 10th time I've said it, and I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing a huge shift, a huge beneficial shift in how Ireland are attacking in the Andy Farrell era. And the last point on that is definitely not meant to be a dig at this coaching team. I think the coaching team are doing quite well. I think they've got the right players roughly on the pitch. I think the players played quite well today. I think we as an Irish public and fan base need to swallow a very, very bitter pill, which is Ireland at the minute are not quite as good. Mal said it, France and England are at the top table at the minute, and we are not, and that has not been the case for the past 15 years. And I think as fans and media in Ireland, we need to swallow that.
Okay, well then, do we just accept that we're a country with small playing numbers and that's going to happen from now and then, or do we talk about David Nucifora, or this could be a conversation for later in the tournament? But is it acceptable that we go from arguably like beating the All Blacks, winning the Grand Slam, whatever, in 2018 to maybe just not being good enough and being a mid-table kind of team, Mal, just a couple of years later?
Yeah, well, Six Nations rugby is different every year, and
that's true.
Teams have peaks and troughs. I know that the RFU have done incredibly well, and their academies, certainly Leinster Academy, has been pretty exceptional in terms of developing players. And they have the greatest playing base, so it's probably no surprise. Possibly you could look at some of the other academies and question what they're developing, but we have seen some green shoots from the other 3 provinces. So we do have to be hopeful and positive that players are coming. There is no doubt that we are always going to be the underdogs when challenging against France and England. As you referred to, it is about playing base, and it's also about the fact that we have 16 guys playing at 23 from one team. Whereas the French team are a mix of 14 teams. so there is a much greater concentration of quality players within that French side, and a greater depth of players in which the quality of players can improve. I think our team. I think for if we were to just look at that match, I thought that Ireland, their resilience was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like they were under the cosh after 5 minutes in that second half. They'd another two senior guys come off. Their 10 had just come off. Yet they somehow dug in and stuck in the game, and that's always been Ireland's way. It's never going to be any different. We are not going to go and hammer France and England by 15, 20 points. The golden generation, that time is gone, and Ireland are what they are and what they've really always been, is a team that has the ability to compete, and you never know, maybe we'll win, and that's the way it has. That's the way it is, and guys need to probably, the public need to probably suck it up a little bit and realize that. But that's not to say that these guys aren't quality players. They are. Sure. They're great players, but they are always going to be up against a greater pool of quality. And that I'm afraid brings even the best out of even better out of players. When you've got more and more quality to call on. Ireland are always going to be, behind the 8 ball when it comes to that.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's probably worth mentioning as well that, we're talking about beating France regularly over the last few years when it was probably the worst French teams that we can remember, and they're back now as well. So, and it is worth kind of giving them some credit as well. But Darren, Mal alluded to it there. I was going to say, we did have some positives today. Ireland didn't go away. At the start of the second half, that game could have ended very quickly. I know, there was a couple of mistakes on the French line. It just seemed like one of those games where there could be 2-3 tries all of a sudden, and we're just kind of going, God, that this is over. That happened very suddenly. But it didn't happen like that, and we kept going to the end. And I did think that there was some positive performances there. Ross Byrne came off the bench, and it hasn't happened for him in a green jersey yet. And if things had gone differently, if he'd been given a chance, he by the forwards or by the rest of the team, he could have been a hero today. And things did go for him. Keith Earls was much better than he was last week, and they did keep going to the very end. I mean, there will be. You mentioned that Andy Farrell is probably doing a better job than people are giving him credit for, but there were definitely positives in the individual displays today, if maybe not the chances weren't taken or the tactics maybe weren't right as a team.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that going on. I think both the centres have been playing really well. Sorry to bore everyone with my old position. Keith Earls is a guy who's been playing really well. I think Hugo Keenan, the past 6 months has been brilliant. If ever a player was just born for international rugby, he's come in, he's just settled in. This is a guy who's going to play 70, 80 times for Ireland, no doubt. I think the fly half's a really interesting one. I think Ross Byrne has been really, really unfortunate with his opportunities for Ireland. I think he's played, I may be wrong here, so don't quote me, but I think he might have played at Twickenham twice in sort of under par Ireland teams that have been absolutely hammered. And as a 10, you are the absolute scapegoat. So I think he played in the World Cup warm-up game where they shipped 50, and I think he played in that game at the end of 2020.
He did, yeah.
And if the team goes badly, if the pack struggle, if the scrums poor, if the lineouts poor, if your forwards are getting absolutely melted, the 10 is the guy that suffers. He's the guy who people go, oh, when Ross Byrne got the ball, he just didn't look like he knew what he was doing. That's because he didn't know what he was doing, because England have absolutely massacred his whole pack. They've got 14 players on their feet. They've got a bricklet wall in front of them, and the backfield's been filled. So I do think Ross Byrne has been very unfortunate with a couple of really substandard performances in games where he had absolutely no chance. You could have put Dan Carter into those Ireland teams and he wouldn't have played well. Having said that, I actually thought for like the incident at the end of the game last week and the missed kicks not ideal. If you're going to win Test matches, you want to be kicking 90% plus. I thought some of Ireland's attack under Billy Burns was really, really good as well.
Side kicking, yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, so I think listen, I don't know. It's interesting to see how it'll pan out over the next few weeks. But I suppose in answer to the question, I think Ross Byrne probably, I think confidence in Ross Byrne probably went up today. Even though I thought for the 35, whatever minutes it was, Billy Byrne was on the pitch, I thought of a lot of Ireland's play was very, very nice. So I think there's a lot to sort of do that, and I think people forget like there's a big vacuum behind Johnny Sexton, and again, people want a scapegoat, people want to blame somebody, but if you look at it, Ian Madigan was there. He went to France, he went to Bristol. Paddy Jackson was there. It hasn't worked out for him. Joey Carberry at one stage was there's always one game, I think, at Joey Carberry. He played this game for Munster away to Gloucester. Yeah. And I remember thinking, this guy is the next starting Ireland guy. This guy is phenomenal. The gap between him and Johnny Sexton is tiny. And for him, like, Ireland have really suffered. His injury has affected Ireland over the past 2 years. Even at the World Cup, he wasn't right. So it's easy to say that sort of that. I think that vacuum behind Johnny Sexton is purely sort of coincidental. You couldn't have accounted for the fact that Ian Madigan would have essentially kind of ruled himself out through career choices. It wouldn't have worked out for Paddy Jackson, and Joey Carberry would have had this torrid time. We've lost 3 really promising players out of that, and there's still loads of options there. Furthermore, I think we discussed last week, there's a lot being made about Harry Byrne. Loads of excitement in Dublin and Leinster about him. A lot of people, I don't watch Leinster as much as everyone else. A lot of people telling me already they think he's the guy. But he's not getting the chance to play in the Champions Cup. He's dishing up per opposition every week in the Pro 14 behind a dominant Leinster pack, and it's a different sport to international rugby. So even stuff like that, he was due to play against Northampton at the RDS. He had to pull out injury. Even stuff like that, I think, is hampering the development of him and Healy.
It's one of our issues, I suppose, without getting into it now because we're short on time, but it is one of our issues when we only have 4 teams that, we've third choice players in a position at their club, clamoring for international. It wouldn't happen anywhere else, I suppose, but I guess that's just one of our issues. We've loads of comments coming in. I do want to get to a few of them because we're almost out of time, lads. Here they come now. I don't know about this one. Darren, is there any truth in the rumour that KV has been brought into the attack coaching setup? That's why you've been sucking up to Andy Farrell there.
It's a consultancy role from online where you have a glass of beer and you watch Ireland and you give off on Balls.ie after the game, and Andy Farrell logs in very quickly to watch it. That's all it is. And
a nice Chicago town pizza. DuPont had a modest game in my view. Social media singing his praises. Was he that good? I thought you said something similar there, Mal. Actually, he was quiet at times, but he looked dangerous when he did get those chances, didn't he?
Yeah, I think everything he did and the couple of breaks he had, you see how dangerous he was. I think it's probably a credit to the Irish defence that they were able to keep him so quiet and reduce like that. I don't think the French had a huge amount of game breaks. I think Gaël Ficou was probably the one guy that got some soft shoulders and some yards, but DuPont is such a threat that, perhaps he made space for some of the other guys outside him, we did see that a little bit of class, and in fairness, Will Connors actually made a bit of a fool out of him right at the end, and was an important turnover for us. So we did get to see that he is human after all, and he does he does make the odd mistake. And I just credit Irish defence for that. Like they had the French had so many threats. A really, really dangerous side, and to limit them to really one opportunity in the first half and one opportunity in the second half is pretty good going, and it's just a shame that we just couldn't get a little more territory and really make a run of it, especially in the last 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Another comment there. I think actually, Darren, did you think that France showed us enough today to think that they actually are at that top level that they could beat England here and maybe go and win a Grand Slam at this stage?
Tough question to answer. I didn't think they played fantastically well today, but I think they are capable of winning the whole championship. One thing I sort of forgot is just you can see how much it meant to them at full time. They haven't had great success in Ireland over the past while.
No.
So did we see it today? I don't think France will be sort of watching that game back, talking about how mercurial they were and how brilliantly they played. But I think they'll be delighted with the result. I mean, Six Nations, just go there and get a win and get on with it.
Okay. I think we definitely have a couple more comments that we want to get to before we go. One here saying, I honestly think Farrell needs to go as coach. We need Ronan O'Gara in to coach with O'Connell. We need a good kicker in. We have no one to take someone with ideas of their own, especially from the 80th, 84th minute where we couldn't penetrate that defence, which is, a comment. I think it's a bit rash to say, let's get in Rog and O'Connell at this stage. At least our line-out was good today, I suppose.
Pressure on Rog. Yeah.
At least the line-out was
good today.
Rog
wouldn't be able to do his TV gig, though, and coach. Maybe he could do both. It
was a nice shirt and tie combo. He looked like he was going to a Munster after dinner special there today.
He probably was. I wouldn't. A Zoom call probably a little bit later on. I wouldn't put it past him. He's hungry, very hungry.
Ireland have a week off now, as do everybody else, and then we're going to Rome. Damien Albarn said Italy will be feeling confident for a win. Italy were much improved yesterday against England, but it's the first time Ireland have lost 2 games at the start of a Six Nations campaign since it became the Six Nations, which is an amazing thing, actually. We're talking like this is the 21 years, but 22nd year of it. I think that this is the best match we could possibly have, Darren, isn't it, for to get us back on track somewhat ahead of the Scotland and England games?
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, and it just shows you how good Ireland have been for the last 20 whatever years. And nice that you clarified that technicality, Mick. I was going to get the calendar out and go, hold on, 2021, that's just the 22nd season. But yeah, I think I don't know. I don't want to be pessimistic, and I don't want to be like have fans not having a fruitful sort of outlook about Irish rugby. I just like in the last couple of years we were the second best rugby team in the world, and if you take your heart and your love for Ireland out of it, I'm just not sure as to why we should be the second best rugby team in the world. Nothing. There's nothing like playing numbers, teams selected. There's no reason. There's no plausible reason that we should ever be the second best rugby team in the world. So it's kind of like, I don't think that's like a morbid, I hope it's not like a morbid sort of viewpoint. I think Ireland have just been on a great sort of stretch. Is it acceptable to now go, okay, well, we had a great 20 years, now we're going to be poor? No, I don't think that's the case. I do think there's a lot of stuff going on beneath Ireland about the dominance at Leinster, the lack of competition in the Pro 14, how Leinster are currently cruising through everything, and the other provinces are doing okay. But I think there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, Ma, we'll leave the last word to you then. There's just 3 games left. Italy, Scotland, the resurgent Scotland, who threw it all away yesterday, as only Scotland can do, and England, who we don't know what the hell's going on with them quite yet. But do you see us getting two wins out of what's left?
Well, I see 3 real challenges. The first, obviously, to go away to Italy, and as you said, the Italians will be eyeing us up. They will see weakness, and rightfully so, with a few senior guys down, a lot of change in the Irish ranks. The Italians will be absolutely hungry for it, and the Italians have been getting better game after game. They were good. They were okay against the English. They showed a lot of resilience. And stuck to it, and the English really had to steamroll them to get their tries. So Ireland, in the manner that they play currently, they're going to find it hard going against the Italians. But you still would hope that they would have enough to beat them. And then the Scottish, we have been able to beat the Scottish of late. Now you're looking at how good Hogg is, and how good Van der Merwe is, and even Dawson. These guys, their back 3 are pretty good. And Finn Russell, we may come off second best there. The Scots are going to be very hungry for us, and then you just never know. To play England at home, we might turn them over. So, I'd say possibly we win one of the next three anyway.
Yeah, robbing England of a championship on the last day in the
that
Aviva
would be nice.
is just
we're capable of it.
That's the way Ireland end disappointing seasons, Mal. It's a well established tradition at this stage.
That's Six Nations rugby, So
absolutely.
Never write us off, But similarly, so you can't expect us to win Grand Slams at the moment. But it mightn't take much for us to get back up there again. You never know. A few young guys, like Ronan Kelleher, coming through, but there'll have to be a lot of other guys coming through to fill the shoes of some of the senior guys. Like as we've talked about, like with Johnny going or Johnny injured, and there's a good whole host of other guys. We need more and more guys pushing for places.
Great stuff. Well, look, thanks a million for joining us today, Mal. Thanks as always as well to Darren. And thanks to you for watching and for all your comments as well. One of you will win an Ireland jersey and some Chicago Town pizza vouchers for getting involved. Last week we had Fred Sharkey who won that for his comments into the show. I said that is it for today on The Takeaway with Chicago Town. Thanks a million to the lads. We'll be back again in 2 weeks for a live reaction to Italy versus Ireland. Before then, stay tuned to our channels for Eddie O'Sullivan's breakdown of the game on The Deep Dive with Chicago Town. And then join us on Saturday and pick yourself up a Chicago Town pizza for the game. They really are a great addition. We'll talk to you then.